Hi, I'm Leslie Gold, the radio chick, and there you have it.
Greetings everyone, I'm Michelangelo and this is There You Have It. The following is an interview with my good friend Luis Prat, who is a union activist involved in labor issues in Santa Barbara, California. He's also a worker who works at the university at UCSB. Recently, Mr. Prat decided to refute the comments of a right-wing racist DJ at KCSB in Santa Barbara, California. This involved immigration issues. There was an allowance of time for Luis to broadcast his views live on radio on August 10th of this year. The following is a videotaped version of that refutal.
When someone uses public airwaves emanating from a community radio station, that person wields a lot of power, the power to address the general public. When such access is granted free of charge, all in the name of free speech also demands that opposite voices be heard. I have recently heard a very bigoted and vile tirade against Mexicans and Latinos in general. This happened at Santa Barbara, California, in a radio station KCSB 91.9 FM. The DJ was Randolph the Rooster Sipples, and he started saying all kinds of things. Among them, he claimed that when he was growing up in Sacramento, California in the 1950s, there was only European people, and the Asians were the only minority. And the overwhelming number of people were of European descent. There were no problems, no racial tensions in his high school because there was no segregation, as he put it, because there were no people who weren't of European descent. Now, what gets me is how can you segregate a homogeneous group? He said it. Though it's hard to believe that in the 1950s, there was not a large Latino population in Sacramento, California. What happened to history? Weren't we Latinos here for a lot longer than the Anglos? When's all those Spanish names, our cities, mountains, rivers, the whole state, the whole Southwest? The DJ went on. When a new wave of immigration arrived, thanks to the do-gooders that created a segregation problem, prejudices, affirmative action, befell the US of A because those who insisted that immigration be worldwide and not just from the European area, unquote. This is a deeply racist mindset, and this rebuttal doesn't attempt to educate these people like him and show them how evil and ugly and destructive those ways are. I'm not about to waste my time and energy educating them, but it's necessary to refute him with facts, with real facts, and that is what I'm going to do here in a little while, present hard facts. I have tried to access the site that the DJ mentioned, immigrationcounter.com, but I couldn't find it. I did all the research on my own in order to dispel many myths surrounding immigration, both the documented and the undocumented kind. I refuse to use the term illegal. No human being is illegal. The simple fact of being born in this planet should, by all natural law, give you certain inalienable rights, automatic rights. But people-made, government-made borders tend to obscure this basic fact by imposing layer upon layer of rules, laws and regulations, lines on the map, fences on the ground. Latinos have lived on both sides of the US-Mexico divide for over 400 years. So when we say we didn't cross the border crossed us, that's the whole truth. In another segment, this Randolph Rooster has stated that the solution to the health crisis would be to deport all the illegals, quote unquote. This drivel would be fun if it weren't so dangerous. This kind of speech is designed to stir racist feelings and hate. It has no basis in reality. The healthcare crisis is what naturally follows when you apply capitalism to the health of the people. It creates a greedy, heartless system where doctors make money when you're sick, not when you're healthy. Wherever incentive is there to keep you unhealthy, when drug companies constantly push chemicals of questionable value or downright killers, and insurance companies play with the money and the lives of the working people. The healthcare crisis has nothing to do with immigration, and to conflate the two is a cynical intellectual aberration. There are many myths out there regarding immigrants, more particularly Latino immigrants. We constitute the largest majority of minority people. But also, there's a lot of prejudice also against other non-white immigrants. During times of national stress, such as today, it's very useful to the powers that be to have a scapegoat, somebody who's defenseless and can be hammered away without fear of retaliation. It galvanizes and unifies the people. The Nazis used such tactics, demonizing the Jews, the Roma, and many others, and that brought us the Holocaust in World War II. Racism has a deep history in the United States, a country made by white European settlers imbued with ideas of white supremacy, who used African slaves to do their work for them and killed off the native population to steal their land. Many people from all racial backgrounds have been demonized by societal powers such as the press and the pulpit to provide the majority of white people with a convenient scapegoat to confuse and distract attention from the root of their problems, which is the capitalist imperialist system that rules this country and indeed the world. Today, a similar trend is operating. Arabs and Muslims in general are demonized in the media and the movies. And this sudden ado about immigration last year, trying to pass new laws and all that, the increase in frequency and harshness of immigration raids, the increased publicity surrounding immigration, the Minutemen, vigilantes, all this confirm it. Because we live in such a climate today, incendiary speech such as the roosters has to be addressed. We're not going to be silent anymore. On May Day 2006, 30,000 of us took to the street here in Santa Barbara, California to make that very point, and millions more did so throughout the United States. Let's go shed some light to some common myths about immigration. This is from the Center for American Progress, http www.americanprogress.org. Reality check: immigrants in the U.S. healthcare system. The myth is that public health insurance programs are overburdened with documented and undocumented immigrants. The reality: 21% of the total medical costs were paid through public sources for the native-born citizens, compared to 16% for documented and undocumented immigrants. In terms of the taxes paid per household, this equals $56 for health care for documented immigrants and $11 for health care, only emergency Medicaid services, by the way, for the undocumented. The myth: immigrants come to the United States to get access to health services. The reality: immigrants are most likely to be employed in industries that do not offer health insurance coverage, such as agriculture, construction, food processing, restaurants, and hotel services. Uninsured rates in these industries are more than 30% for all workers, compared to 19% for workers across all industries. Myth: undocumented immigrants are free riders in the U.S. healthcare system. Reality: the National Research Council concluded that immigrants will pay on average $80,000 per capita or more in taxes than they will use in government services over their lifetime. That's $80,000 each immigrant will contribute more overall in taxes than they will take back, fellows. $80,000 each one, okay? Social Security Administration estimates that workers without a valid Social Security number contribute $7 billion in Social Security tax revenues and roughly $1.5 million in Medicare taxes annually. And yet elderly immigrants rarely qualify for Medicare or long-term care services provided through Medicaid. And this is $7 billion that they will never collect. Reality check: immigrants and the U.S. workforce. Myth: out-of-work natives could replace undocumented immigrants in our workforce. Reality: removing all undocumented immigrants from the U.S. workforce would leave a 2.5 million low-skilled jobs unfilled. In a paper commissioned by the Center for American Progress, William and Mary economists David A. Jaeger found a telling disparity between myth and reality in the effects of immigration work on the workforce. Out-of-work natives could not effectively replace undocumented workers. The jobs that undocumented immigrants currently hold require a substantially lower skill set than most jobless natives possess. As a result of the skills gap, only 105,000 natives could fill the jobs that undocumented immigrants, and that would leave 2.4 million jobs empty, unfilled. Such a loss would put states with large immigrant populations such as Arizona and California in dire straits. Myth: undocumented immigrants are a drain on the U.S. economy. In reality, even conservative estimates such show that undocumented immigrants play a substantial role in supporting the U.S. economy and boosting the potential. In Arizona, they earn 2.9% of all total wages. That's 2.5 times more than doctors, 3.5 times more than lawyers and police officers and firefighters. Their presence in the labor force not only buttresses the force's lower tiers, but also fosters overall economic growth. A 2006 study found that state revenues collected from undocumented immigrants in Texas exceeded by $424.7 million what the state spent on those immigrants in public services such as education and health care for all of 2005. Undocumented immigrants do not pay taxes. That is another myth. Undocumented immigrants pay taxes in a number of ways, including income and sales taxes. The majority of undocumented immigrants pay income taxes using individual taxpayer identification numbers, ITINs, or false Social Security numbers. All immigrants, regardless of status, will pay on the average $80,000 each more in taxes than they use in government services over their lifetime. Social Security system reaps the biggest downfall of it all. It holds approximately $420 billion from the earnings of immigrants that are in no position to claim benefits. This last item is from testimony on the ITIN and Social Security number misuse, presented by Patrick P. O'Carroll, Jr., Social Security Administration Office of the Inspector General, to the House Committee on Ways and Means, Subcommittee on the Oversight of Social Security, U.S. House of Representatives, Washington, D.C., March 24, 2004. www.ssa.gov/OIG/communications. You can find it there. Another myth is that there is weak support for immigration reform among the public. The reality is that voters consistently have expressed support for immigration reform. A recent CNN poll found that 80% of the people favors a program for immigration reform that would allow immigrants living in the United States a path to citizenship. For those immigrants that have been here for several years, hold jobs, and are willing to pay back taxes. A Quinnipiac University poll from last November similarly showed that a very strong 69% to 27% majority of registered voters favor a similar program. Another popular myth is that Latino immigrants use and abuse the welfare system. This is false. Undocumented immigrants are not eligible for any form of welfare, including food stamps, and documented immigrants have a 5-year moratorium on the use of federal benefits. The only public services undocumented immigrants enjoy are Medicaid only for medical emergencies and public school education for the children of undocumented immigrants per Supreme Court decision Playa v. Doe 457 U.S. 202 of 1982. Business needs immigration, legal or illegal, but preferably the legal sort, since workers with few rights are more easily manipulated. Their wages can be sublegal minimum wage. They won't complain when their breaks are denied. When they get hurt on the job, they do not file a workers' compensation claim. When they're sexually harassed by foremen and bosses, they don't file a complaint. They do not join unions in general, although thank God that is changing. But in general, they are much more vulnerable and therefore malleable workforce than documented workers are, who at least on paper have the right to some redress for their grievances. Here's what the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, Texas, hardly a leftist organization, had to say about this. Immigration and monetary and fiscal policy. The fact that it fluctuates with the business cycle is one way immigration facilitates the work of monetary policymakers. By providing workers when and where they are needed, immigration raises the speed limit of the economy by keeping wage and price pressures at bay. In 2000, at the height of the economic boom, Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan attributed the U.S. economy's remarkable growth record to two main factors: productivity growth and labor force growth. Both factors held down unit labor costs and allowed the economy to grow faster with less inflation, thereby reducing the need for the Fed to intervene by tightening interest rates to slow growth. In the long run, immigrants also have a beneficial effect on the fiscal health of pay-as-you-go government programs such as Social Security and Medicare. Because immigrants are younger than natives on average and have higher fertility rates, immigration decelerates the aging of the population. This slows the ongoing decline in the ratio of workers to retirees and helps maintain the solvency of these programs. This last point is very interesting. As the Bard would say, and therein lies the rub, this is the racist and this is the rooster's fear, that in the future the majority of the population will be brown, not white, will be non-European. Fear of the other is a basic characteristic of racism. One of the many reasons for the large increase in immigration from Mexico during the last 10 years is NAFTA, the free trade agreement that Bill Clinton negotiated with Mexico and came into effect January 1st, 1994, also the day of the Zapatista uprising. The number of Mexicans living in severe poverty grew by 4 million since then. 50,000 Mexican farmers lose their land annually. Victims of free trade produce grown in the U.S. corporate mega farms that are generously subsidized by the government, and then that produce being sold in Mexico at prices that the local farmers can't compete with. So they lose their farms, they migrate to the north or to Mexican cities where they try to eke out a living, and when that eventually they have to make their way north here because there are more jobs to work in the lower sectors of our economy. Thus, the blame for increased levels of illegal immigration can be rightly placed on the U.S. government and the corporations it is beholden to that work so hard to get NAFTA passed. There are enormous cultural contributions to American life made by Latino immigrants. Many fields such as music and sports have been greatly enriched by the presence of Latinos in these endeavors. Ours is a very rich and ancient culture that comes from Spain, Africa, and the native peoples of Central and South America. Our Spanish language has produced world-class works of literature, in every sense comparable to the gems of English literature or any other language. We have excelled through the times in art, painting, sculpture, both in Spain and in America. The same can be said for the cinema. To try and diminish us by implying that we are culturally inferior kind of people bespeaks of either abysmal ignorance or malicious intent. Another contribution we Latinos make is service in the armed forces. Although I do not agree with war, and I want to see each and every army, each and every missile, each and every bomb in the world gone, and all armies abolished, I have to say that to those who hate us, that yes, when called upon, we even shed blood by the buckets in defense of this country. In Vietnam, we were a very sizable segment of the forces in the jungle, who along with our black brothers bore the brunt of the fighting. Today in Iraq, there are many of us doing the dirty work for Uncle Sam to get even richer. I'm going to quote now from an article by Deborah Davis in These Times. Illegal immigrants, Uncle Sam wants you. Quote, in the Iraq War, citizenship is being used as a recruiting tool aimed specifically at young immigrants who are told that by enlisting they will be able to quickly get citizenship for themselves, unquote. This is sometimes true, sometimes not true, depending on what ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, determines after surveilling and investigating them and their families for a whole year. Nevertheless, continue the quote, with the political pressures on Latino families growing daily under this administration, many young Latinos are unable to resist the offer, which immigrants' rights activists see as a blatant exploitation of a vulnerable population. The large majority of the new recruits are signed up through the delayed entry program, which operates in high schools, GED programs, and homeschooling networks across the nation. End quote. Later on, we read in the same article, the Department of Defense's casualty database doesn't publicly break down the dead and injured by ethnic group, but a tally of Latino surnames found that between January 10th, when the surge began, and July 1st, 20% of the 174 people aged 18 to 21 who died were likely to have been Latino. The military doesn't keep public data on the race and ethnicity of the casualties. With the intensification of the depth recruiting efforts in largely Latino high schools since the invasion began, this is no surprise. Documented or undocumented? Again, quoting Deborah Davis, how many of these young Latino recruits are illegal immigrants? Nobody knows, says Flavia Jimenez, an immigration policy analyst at the National Council of La Raza. But what we do know is that recruiters may not be up to speed on every person's legal status. We also know that a significant number of immigrants have died in Iraq. The recruitment of illegal immigrants is particularly intense in Los Angeles, where 75% of the high school students are Latino. A lot of our students are undocumented, says Arlene Inoue, a teacher at Garfield High School in East Los Angeles. And it's common knowledge that recruiters offer green cards. Inoue is coordinator and founder of Coalition Against Militarism in Our Schools, CAMS, a counter-recruitment organization that educates teenagers about deceptive recruiting practices. The practice is very widespread all over the nation, she says, especially in California and Texas. The recruiters tell them, you will be helping your family. What recruiters do not tell their targets is that the military itself has no authority to grant citizenship. What they do is they forward the citizenship applications to ICE, who then scrutinizes them and their families for up to a year. Okay, to finalize, what I have to say today to America in general is that as a community, we constitute the largest minority group in the United States. We have ancient roots in these lands, older than those of most European immigrants. Our contributions to the economy far exceed what we take out of it. We take care of your gardens, we harvest your crops, we build your houses, we make your beds in hotels, residences, and palaces, and cook your food, and we serve it to you. We take care of your children, and you're old and you're sick. We toil in slaughterhouses and pack the beef and poultry that stocks your supermarket shelves. We grace you with our music, with our dances. We delight your palace with our food that you so like to eat and you constantly imitate. And we fight and bleed and die for you, America. Don't ever forget. My name is Louis J. Pratt, and there you have it.
Okay, all seriousness aside, now for a little bit of levity. I have a dedication to Mr. Luciano Pavarotti by Rudy Makaji, comedian, acrobat extraordinaire. I had the opportunity to see him here in New York City. Where do you see this? This is good stuff. And there you have it.
La donna Babila. I like you. And Sonny, can you unzip me?
Whatever you say, boss.
Gentle. I don't trust you. Nice.
Is this good?
Yeah. Then hold the microphone. Let me do the part that you like. Excuse me, man. Thank you.
No problem.
Well, thanks for stopping by. I hope everything was informative and enjoyable. I'm Michelangelo, and there you have it.
Quiero decirle al tirano que no se lave las manos, que la sangre de los pueblos jamás se podrá limpiar, ni con dinero, ni con petróleo, ni con promesas falsas de libertad. La gente humilde, la que trabaja, ya no se deja engañar. Zapata vive, la lucha sigue. Zapata vive, la lucha sigue. Zapata vive, la lucha sigue. Zapata. Quiero decirle al tirano que tiene sus días contados, desde Chiapas a Seattle, desde Genova Blues. La gente lucha, se educa, se levanta, ya no mendiga, reclama libertad.
Hi there, I'm your cousin Brucey, and there you have it.